Hello, I'm Nina Rosman. Today is a special episode on Niaga AWANI where I will be having a conversation and exclusive interview with the Chief Executive Officer, CEO of Zeteo, Mehdi Hasan, to have a conversation on two relevant and timely topics on National Human Capital Development Conference and Exhibition 2024 and the future human capital development on a global scale. Let's take a look. Chief Executive Officer of Zeteo, the Mehdi Hasan, want to share on the very relevant and timely topics on the National Human Capital Exhibition and Conference, and we want to talk about on the human capital development on a global scale. Firstly, talking about this exhibition conference, how does it aim to align with the global agenda with the accelerating of technology, digital, how to make it more relevant on the global stage?
Well, I think it's fascinating that Malaysia, which is a country that has become a bit of a digital hub in Southeast Asia, is attracting investment from Amazon and Google. Microsoft has chosen via its ministry here, via the HRD, via the National Human Capital Conference and Exhibition, to take on a pretty big topic, right? A huge issue for people everywhere. This is not just being debated in Malaysia. I'm from the United States. It's the big topic of conversation in DC, in New York, in Silicon Valley, in the UK, where I'm also from. A huge topic of consideration. So I was fascinated to be invited here to Kuala Lumpur to come to Malaysia and say, wow, thousands of people coming together in this exhibition center to talk about AI and how it can humanize the workforce and human capital. These are the discussions that we need to be having because AI is not going away. And as I mentioned a moment ago in the Q&A in the hall, you know, the famous story in England is of King Canute. He was the king in the medieval ages who thought he could stand on the beach and turn away the waves. But the waves keep coming, right? We cannot be Canute with AI. AI is coming, and we need to really globally and nationally have an agenda for how we can use it ethically, how we can incorporate into our industries, whether it's news, media, finance, whatever, in a way that's efficient but doesn't destroy human capital but actually bolsters it.
And we can see one of the biggest challenges is the human capital infrastructure. From before pandemic COVID-19, through pandemic COVID-19, and after pandemic, post-pandemic, how do you see, is the challenge still big within the infrastructure, or what are some of the things that we need to address?
It's a great question, and of course the COVID pandemic, especially where I am in the United States, transformed the world of work, right? We had people refusing to return to the offices. We had people quitting their jobs. There was quiet quitting, people saying, you know what, I don't like this job that I did. I realized during the pandemic, I don't need this job. There was an entire transformation of how industries worked, how people approached work itself and employment. And what was interesting is during the pandemic, we all made use of technology, including AI-driven technology, whether it was apps, whether it was shopping from home, whether it was searching online. We all made use of that. But post-pandemic, as you kind of hint there is an issue with is that same technology going to destroy jobs? Is it going to destroy human capital infrastructure? So it's a balancing act where people have taken advantage of the technology to change their own lives, but the technology itself could also threaten people's futures and careers. And I think the big question again, post-pandemic, is what kind of regulations are we going to bring in? What kind of oversight are we going to bring in? People don't like these words, especially in tech. Right? A lot of tech billionaires in the United States, where I come from, are libertarians. They're on the political right. They don't want regulation. They don't want higher taxes. They don't want the government involved in their business. But AI is somewhere that you have to have some kind of regulation because otherwise the potential for downsides is endless.
And how do you think that businesses can bridge the skills gap to sustain the economic growth?
So I think one important point is what are we doing to teach people how to use AI? I think what's going to become very important is what are we doing in schools and universities and colleges to equip a young generation with the skills they need to adapt to a world that is driven by AI? Again, to go back to the King Canute example, it's not going anywhere. Resistance to AI, sorry to sound like a character in Star Trek, but resistance is futile. It is coming, it is here. I said in my speech, it's not coming, it's happening right now. It's not some future development. So the issue then is how are we upskilling and training young people joining the workforce of how to use AI? And I quoted Karim Lakhani from Harvard Business School, who says, you know, it's not that AI will replace humans, it's that humans who know how to use AI will replace humans who don't know how to use AI.
And we also want to talk about the breakthrough in the human capital strategies. What groundbreaking strategies do you think the human capital development will NHCC bring to the forefront? Maybe you can share some examples of innovations that could significantly shape the global workforce.
I mean, global workforce is a big question. I know that NHCC is doing work here. I've only been in Malaysia for a day, but what I'm hearing is that there is a lot of thought going into this. There is a lot of debate and discussion going into it. Just to hold such a big conference with 4,000 people is itself a testimony to the need and the ability and the desire of people here, both in government and in business, and in human capital development, to really think about what are the solutions, what is the best way of, and I love the title of the conference, of humanizing AI, which is so important to me. I don't have those answers. I said in my speech, I'm a small businessman. I run a small company that I founded this year called Zeteo. We have big ambitions, but we're a small team. We're a staff of 9-10 people, and we're going to have to answer those questions as to what is the best way to use AI. Is there a way to use AI to bolster Zeteo's media output? Is there a way to use AI to bolster the human resources of our company so that we're actually working smarter and more efficiently? Those are questions I don't have answers to, but they're questions we have to pose.
And we can see more that developed countries, emerging countries like Malaysia itself, maybe you want to learn from advanced country. Do we have the capability, the capacity to adapt and learn from neighboring countries, especially for the advanced economies?
So I think it's a great question, but I would turn it around. Given that this is such a new technology that we're all embracing for the first time and that we're still finding our feet, well, ChatGPT, for example, in the US, where people are still working out what to do about OpenAI, I actually think the question could be turned around and say, it's not what Malaysia can learn from other countries. Can Malaysia play a role where Malaysia takes the lead in digital innovation when it comes to cloud computing, when it comes to data, when it comes to AI, when it comes to American investment from big tech companies? Can Malaysia actually say, you know what, look at what we're doing. Look at the conversations we're having that other countries say, oh, wow, okay, we should follow them. And I think the technological revolution we're seeing right now could actually be a great equalizer in the sense that it's not just the big countries or the richer countries that take the lead, it's the smarter countries and the more dynamic countries that take the lead. And that doesn't depend on what your income bracket is or where in the world you are.
And with AI-enabled automation rapidly advancing, maybe you can share with us where do you see the great opportunities for technological transformation and even in the human capital development on a global scale?
I mean, there are so many. I can only talk about my own industry. And where I talk about my own industry is this idea that we can remove an entire swath of work that journalists used to have to do to make journalism happen. People don't realize journalists end up doing a lot of stuff that isn't journalism, right? In terms of daily organization, in terms of data classification, in terms of financial aspects. And I think AI can basically take a lot of that stuff off their hands, automate what doesn't need to be human. Not automate everything, but automate the stuff that doesn't need to be human-driven or human-led. And that is so exciting because it frees up journalists. One of the big challenges journalists have right now is time and resources. Time and resources. How do you get a story produced? How do you get a story out there? Well, we're limited time, limited resources. If AI can help on the time front and the resource front, it actually opens the door to boundless opportunities for journalists to break new stories, to go new places, to produce new content.
And you want to strike a balance between the economic growth versus the human development.
Yes.
And how can policymakers balance the short-term drive for economic growth and the long-term imperative with the human capital development, especially particularly in emerging economies like you mentioned?
Yes.
How can Malaysia lead the conversation, lead the discussion?
I would like to see governments in the global south actually redefine what we mean by economic growth. That's a much bigger topic than AI. I think we've become so obsessed with GDP as a number, and no one's disputing the fact that people need to eat and put food on the table and be able to provide for their families and have jobs. Of course, the basics of economic growth we all understand, but we have to understand that economic growth in and of itself is not enough, cannot be the only goal. And of course, economic growth for who? Right, this is the big question. When we look at countries and say they're growing fast, is the country growing fast or is the top 1% in that country growing fast? So we think we have to have much bigger conversations about what we mean by growth. Are we leaving behind the workforce? Are we leaving behind people in low-skilled jobs? Are we destroying certain industries with our rush for kind of a global definition of growth that doesn't suit each country individually?
And how can we ensure equal both towards these two critical aspects?
How can we?
Can ensure equal weight for these two critical aspects for economic growth and human development?
We need a combination of bold leaders who are willing to stand up to entrenched interests and say that I'm not just going to follow a kind of corporate line, but I'm actually going to think about my people as a whole. and we need a public that is willing to actually challenge the people in power. When I say people in power, I don't just mean politicians. I mean the boardrooms, the C-suites, the corporations, to say, actually, stop talking about growth in some abstract way. What are you doing for me and my skills and my children's futures and our education and our skill sets? I think human capital is a very valuable phrase in that context. Sometimes, again, human capital could just be a buzzword that people use at conferences. We actually have to talk about what it actually means. It means human dignity. It means human skills. It means the ability of human beings to control their own destinies.
And how can we ensure the educational progress prepares future generations for both current and emerging technologies and challenges?
I think we, again, need bold visionary leadership which says, you know what, we're going to redefine education as we know it, both in high schools and in colleges, to understand the role of technology, whether you're in an arts program, whether you're learning history or English or geography or philosophy, whatever your major is, whatever your degree is in. I think everyone now needs to be skilled and trained in understanding what role AI can play in whatever future industry they plan to go into. I went to university in 1997. I'm old. I graduated in 2000. I did a degree in politics, philosophy, and economics. I'm a Luddite. My kids have to help me upload apps to my phone still, right? But I know now if I was going to university today, I would want to be taught the stuff that I wasn't taught in the late 1990s, because it's not enough just to have an arts degree or a philosophy degree or a political science degree. AI is everywhere and in every field, and I think we need to be, from a very young age, making people understand the opportunities and the risks from AI, but also understanding how best to use it in whatever field they choose to go into.
And during 2020 till 2022, we can see those are the years that we're focusing mostly for recovery within the economic sector, within the health sector. And during 2022, 2024, we can see more efforts from the government, agency, institution to focus more on adapting technologies and green initiative. But moving forward, 2024, maybe in 10, 50 years, how do you see current trends? Maybe we can see within the workforce transformation global, or what are other things we should take a look at?
I think people who try and predict what's going to be the world's going to be like in 10 years or 20 years should probably give it up, because I don't think anyone can get it right. Mm-hmm. I think people who think they know what's going to happen in any field, right now we are going through so much change and so much flux and so much chaos. I think the predictions game is for fools. I think anyone who thinks that they could have predicted where we would be with AI today would have no clue. Look at the growth and speed of ChatGPT over the last 2 years. I think, look at my own industry, the media. People who think they know what's going to happen in the media have no clue. Look at the change in terms of what's happening in streaming and online, social media. People have no idea how technology is going to transform our world and our economies. I think that we need to focus on the here and now and worry less about 2050 and 2070.
Usually, the policymakers usually takes a little bit longer time than right now. We are focusing on digital technology, AI's adaptation, but in the future, maybe policymakers need to wait and see what's the effects, what's the factor of these emerging technologies. What's your thought on this?
Yeah, we need responsible leadership, and the minister mentioned in his remarks earlier about, we can't have people jumping on the bandwagon. And I think when anything new and shiny comes along, the politicians want to be associated with it. They want to say we're part of it, we're encouraging it, we're helping it. And look, that's not always the wise move. Sometimes we need politicians to put the brakes on something, to say, you know what, we're going to slow this down. We're going to respond to public opinion. We're going to be responsible actors. We're going to use our power to, as I say, regulate. The R word has become a bad word, and I don't think it is. I think it can play an important role in every industry, especially emerging and new technologies that we haven't quite worked out how to best use.
As the CEO of Zeteo himself, maybe you can share what's your hope, inspiring words for the future out there. Like you said, focus here and now, but what can we say to the future generations out there?
I mean, look, I'm running a media company that I founded because I wanted to have the freedom to say what I want to say. I wanted to be able to kind of break the mold of journalism. I wanted to redefine journalism and show that it can be done in a different way, create entirely new business model. So we're doing that. I think that we are trying to set an example and precedent. We've been very successful in the 6 months we've been created. We have 250,000 subscribers. We have 400,000 subscribers on YouTube. People are impressed at our growth. But as you say, the question is not just our growth. The question is, what kind of media company do we want to be? What kind of content do we want to produce? And when I talk about AI, it's not something that we've gone all in on, but I do want to think about, especially coming to conferences like this, I'm going to go back to the US and think about, well, how do we best use technology so that I can free up my team to do what they do best, which is not technology. What they do best is creating content, is telling stories, is challenging the people in power. How do we use technology to enable ourselves to be best equipped to do that?
Talking about maybe probably transformation, reformation, do you think we still have a lot to do in adapting, in taking adaptation of emerging technologies and AI, or we still have maybe a few 50-50 to go there?
I think there's a lot to be done still. I think adaptation is a huge possibility, but I think we are only, what's the phrase, skimming the surface, touching the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this topic. We're very, very far behind. There is a lot more to do, to discuss, to understand. There was a question from the audience earlier about the ethics of this. We need to be having discussions with some of our best philosophers and ethical minds to discuss how this fits into the world of work, the world of governance, the world of democracy. There's a lot to do.
The innovations and breakthrough that was highlighted by Mehdi Hasan emphasized the need for businesses, governments and institutions to collaborate on creating resilient and future-ready workforce. And for the exclusive interview with Mehdi Hasan, the CEO of Zeteo, you can catch on AWANI.com and across all social media platforms.
What? You thought I was gone? Oh no, you can't get rid of me that easily. I'm back with a whole new media company, in fact, my own. We're calling it Zeteo, the ancient Greek word that goes back to Socrates and Plato, which means to seek out, to inquire, to get to the truth. And that is the guiding principle behind my new media venture. Zeteo will bring you hard-hitting interviews and unsparing analysis that you won't find elsewhere. Shows, podcasts, op-eds, newsletters. We have it all. And it's not just me. I've been busy, a la Nick Fury, assembling an Avengers-style team of contributors, the kind of big names from media, activism and Hollywood that will blow your mind. Now, you know I've never been afraid to ask the tough questions, and I plan to continue doing that, including right now. Will you join me and help build Zeteo from the ground up by becoming a subscriber, a paid subscriber? Sign up below and let's change the news together, because it's time for a new media organization that isn't afraid.